So, how does a major world power deal with a terror attack in its capital, a trade war threat from a superpower, and the launch of a nuclear capable missile all in just 2 days? Today, we are breaking down an incredible 48-hour period that really put India to the ultimate test.
Just picture this for a second. The nation's capital is in shock from an attack. At the exact same time, another global power is threatening an economic showdown. And through all that chaos, the country is also making these huge leaps in its own strategic power. We're going to pull on these three threads to really understand what was going on. So let's start with the event that kicked this whole thing off. All right, so our story really begins with a sudden, violent shock to the system. We're in Delhi, the nation's capital, and it suddenly finds itself under siege. And the human cost was just immediate and devastating. 13 lives lost. Right away, that number put the entire nation on high alert. So, what happened here? Well, a car was packed with explosives and detonated near the Red Fort, which is, a huge national symbol. It killed those 13 people and left another 20 injured. The investigation was immediately handed over to the NIA, the National Investigation Agency. That's the country's top counterterrorism unit. And they filed charges under the UAPA, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which is a very, very serious law. So right from the get-go, they were making it clear this is being treated as a major act of terror. And the official response? It was swift and it was blunt. This quote from Defense Minister Rajnath Singh pretty much captured the entire national mood. A promise of justice and a very clear message that whoever did this would be found. Okay, so as if a huge terror attack wasn't enough to deal with, the pressure was also ratcheting up from the outside. And that brings us to our second thread, India trying to navigate this minefield of global politics and partnerships. And wow, did the situation with the US escalate quickly. I mean, look at this. On day one, you have President Trump publicly saying India is not a good trading partner. Just a few hours later, he halts all trade talks and he points to India buying oil from Russia as the reason. By day two, you can see Washington is kind of scrambling to clean up the mess, calling for clear communication. It was just an absolute diplomatic whirlwind. And let's be clear, this wasn't some subtle diplomatic hint buried in a press release. No way. This was a direct public threat from the President of the United States to hike up tariffs in 24 hours. That's the kind of thing that sends shockwaves through the entire global economy. And here's where the story gets really, really interesting. Just look at this contrast. On one side, you've got this immense pressure from the US. Threats of tariffs, talks are off, things are tense. But at the very same time, India is busy shoring up its regional friendships. Prime Minister Modi was actually in Bhutan, strengthening ties, launching new energy projects. It's a perfect snapshot of a country playing this incredibly complex diplomatic chess game in real time. So, with a crisis at home and pressure from abroad, you might think the natural response would be to just play defense, right? To just hunker down. But that's not what happened, not at all. Our next section looks at how India was also projecting strength and pushing its own agenda forward. Now, to really get the next piece of this puzzle, we need to do a quick tech check on something called MIRV. It stands for Multiple Independently Targetable Reentry Vehicle. Basically, it lets one single missile carry a bunch of different warheads, and each one can hit a totally separate target. This isn't just a small upgrade, it's a massive strategic game changer, so keep that in mind as we look at what happened next.
And here is why that MIRV tech is so important. In the middle of all this chaos, India's DRDO successfully tests a submarine-launched missile that has that MIRV capability. We're talking a range of 8,000 kilometers here. But wait, there's more. A huge military exercise called Trishul kicked off. And get this, while trade tensions with the US were peaking, the Indian Navy was docking in Guam for joint exercises with the US and Japan. And to top it all off, a major Make in India defense deal was signed with Germany. This does not look like a nation on its back foot. This is a nation flexing its muscles.
And this wasn't just about military power. It shows that even with a crisis at home and threats from abroad, the basic engine of the country just kept on running. I mean, take a look. 57 new schools got approved. New clean energy projects were launched. A digital app for laborers was introduced, and they even streamlined the rules for organ donation. The point here is that the fundamental work of just governing and building for the future, it continued, completely uninterrupted.
So you've got a terror attack, a trade threat, major strategic advancements, and domestic policy all crammed into just 48 hours. Let's try to pull all this together and figure out what it all means.
Which brings us right to the heart of it, the main question from this whole period. How does a nation even begin to juggle such massive competing pressures? I mean, how can you possibly manage an immediate terror crisis, a looming economic war, and the long-term project of building a future all at the same time?
In the end, this 48-hour pressure cooker really reveals the complex reality of a rising power. It shows a country with clear vulnerabilities, a capital that can be attacked, an economy that can be squeezed, but it also shows a nation with this incredible capacity to operate on multiple fronts at once, to respond to a crisis with resolve, to counter threats with smart diplomacy, and to never, ever stop building its own future. It's a portrait of a country that isn't just being tested, but is actively carving out its own place in the world.